Okay, we are going to be welcoming folks in. So, hello everyone. Welcome to RNS. It's our last live event of the year before our fall symposium. I'm Nyla Boodoo. I help RNS out with live events and as a host and EP. And as our custom, I would love it if everyone could share as they're joining where they are coming from. So, if folks want to put in a chat where they're joining us from, that would be great. And also, I feel like because of this conversation, it would be great to hear what your favorite podcasts are. And I'm assuming all of them you're gonna say all of your favorite podcasts are Saved by the City and Wisdom and Practice and Pantsuit Politics. But as usual, this is great to see people joining from all across the US and Canada. So thank you for joining us. As we get started here, I did want to mention that we are going to be I wanted to tell you about an opportunity that you all have, a live stream that's going to be available for our day-long symposium that is next month. RNS's fall symposium theme is called God, Government, and the Algorithm. And we are going to be talking about religion, politics, and technology. We have some really incredible conversations that we have lined up with a keynote by Princeton's Dr. Eddie Glaude. We have Pastor Eric Manning of Charleston AME Church, who's going to be in conversation with his friend from the Pittsburgh Tree of Life congregation, Rabbi Jeffrey Myers, and they're going to be talking with Reverend Jackie Lewis about hope in the face of hate. We are going to be talking about AI, politics, and more. The Fall Symposium, which is on October 22nd, is free, the live stream, but registration is required. So we are going to pop a link in the chat for you to please register for that. One more housekeeping note, we are recording this conversation, so we will send out a link to everyone afterwards. Please feel free to share. I'm just going to let a couple more folks go in here. And great, I see that Madeline put the link in there. So if you want to learn more about the Fall Symposium, we're just now announcing that live stream link. So you all who are here have your first opportunity to join us for that. So we know that there's so much going on in the world and in our nation, and we thought this would be a great opportunity to go behind the scenes with some of our favorite podcasters to ask how they're handling and how they're thinking about this particular moment, which is a pretty heavy one. And we started planning this event, obviously, a couple of months ago. I am here in Washington, D.C., where the events of the past few weeks have been a lot. And we know people are looking for help processing conversations, which is why people often turn to their favorite podcasters for this moment. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We are joined by Roxanne Stone from Saved by the City, Simranjeet Singh of Wisdom and Practice, and we get both of the ladies from Pantsuit Politics. We get Beth Silver and Sarah Stewart Holland with us today. Roxanne, Simran, Beth, Sarah, thank you for being with me. This is so great. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
And for everyone who's listening, I wonder if we could try something for this event here. I wonder if we could all just try to be present in this moment and for this conversation and just listen and maybe not focus so much on reacting or putting in comments. Of course, we always want questions. If your question particularly works for what we're talking about, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will start weaving those in and I will leave time for questions at the end as well. But I thought if we could just sort of set that as trying to actually listen and be in conversation with each other, I think that may make a difference to this. So can I just start by asking all of you panelists? Simran, can I start with you? How are you?
Oh, thanks for asking. I'm doing pretty well, all things considered. Family is healthy and safe. World feels like it's on fire. So those two things are true at the same time, but I'm doing well. Thank you.
Beth?
I think a tension that I have between my profession and my personality is that when things get really intense, I kind of want to hunker down and have some quiet and solitude to process. And also my job is to process verbally along with lots of people. So I'm just feeling that tension and trying to figure out, okay, where are the spaces where I can do really good listening and contemplation so that when I show up to verbally process, I say something that I won't regret later, or that will be meaningful in the moment.
Thank you for that, Bev. Sarah?
Yeah, again, I think that's a great way to put it. My family is healthy and safe, and this work is important, but also what I tell people all the time is it's still a great gig. I really like being a podcaster. It can pause, I'm not curing cancer. I get to report sometimes on cures of cancer. That's fun. But, I think that I'm trying to hold it all like everybody else. This is a really cool job. It's talking about some really intense things. My family is safe and healthy, others aren't. I think it's just the complexity of being a human at all times on full display.
Roxy, how about you?
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. My family is healthy and safe right now. I think there's always that strange tension. Like, I have some really fun, happy things going on in my personal life right now, and trying to dig into some creative projects and find space for that and for beauty and enjoying park walks and all of those things. And then I sit down at my desk to work, and it's just nonstop, and it's hard and it's heavy. And so I am good, but I am also like all of the rest of the people here, holding a lot of tension between everything that's happening in the world, which is such a huge part of my life and my professional life, and also just trying to be present to the good things.
Roxy, which I think is a perfect segue to what I wanted to start by asking you, but everyone else as well, about the layers of responsibility you feel like you have when you're doing Saved by the City, because you're juggling a few roles, right? You're executive editor of RNS, so you're a journalist, you're a
Yeah.
Christian, you're a podcaster. How do you balance all of those different things when you're thinking about the show?
Yeah. That's a really good question that I don't really have a good answer to, because I don't always have that at all figured out. And I'm sure that my bosses are listening right now, and I'm sorry for all of the balls that I regularly drop, because
No
I am
wrong answers
balancing
to
all of
this.
those roles. Yeah, so I think that for me, I had to make a real choice early on in podcasting, because my podcast is sponsored by Religion News Service. Like, there's a big, it's part of my job. And that was something I had to decide early on, which was like, I have to treat this like part of my job and not just this extra fun personal thing that I get to do. Because for a while at the beginning, I was sort of like trying to sneak the podcast into my mornings or my evenings, or just like, and I realized, like, this is really a job. Like, this is a hard role that takes a lot of time and energy and thoughtfulness. So I am grateful to RNS for giving me that space to do it as part of my job. Um, but I think the podcast is also a break. Even though we're here to talk about how are we handling this political moment with our podcasts. One of my favorite things about our podcast is that it's not always about politics. And sometimes we talk about dating apps and rapture trauma and Botox. I mean, so we really like try to remember that people are whole people and not just like thinking about politics all of the time. Sometimes we cannot escape it. This is a podcast made by Religion News Service, so there is religion news all of the time, and we try to talk about that. But I also think it's really a space to have some fun. And for me, that's a little bit of a break from my role as executive editor at RNS.
Mhm. Simran, so you're also doing wisdom in practice, but you're also have your academic perspective as another role that we can throw into this. How do you think about that, or how do you bring that to what you're doing?
Yeah, it's fun actually. For me, it's an opportunity. My role here at Union Seminary is an assistant professor of interreligious histories. So I'm very interested and have long been interested in the ways different people live their lives, how they think about the world, how it might be different from me, and how I look at it, but also how we all live together, and how we can learn together. And so, it starts from this. this realization I had, maybe a decade or so ago, that wisdom isn't exclusive to anyone or any tradition. Wisdom is for all of us. But also this deep desire to take those ideas that have survived generations and centuries and millennia, and figure out how they apply to our world today. And so, sort of navigating different ideas also means navigating different challenges, different sets of political concerns. And so it really requires a bit of skillfulness, and a basic understanding of where people are coming from and what motivates them. So there it really is an opportunity, at least for me, to leverage some of the knowledge that I've gathered over the years through my training as an academic, and then bring that into my conversations with people that helps us go deeper into their own thoughts and ideas and practices, but also then with that facility, make it personal at the same time and say, I get you. And you don't have to explain to me, the history of your tradition or where you come from. Let's just talk as people and take it for granted that we're on the same page in terms of where you're coming from and what your tradition has to say. So it's been a really nice balance for me to do that.
Back, Sarah, what do you all think about in your role in terms of hosting Pantsuit Politics and the different things that you all are juggling?
Well, I think that when we started the show, we both made a commitment to just be ourselves on the show, to not try to represent anyone or anything else. And there's a freedom in that. I don't have to think about an employer or what the effect of this is going to be, on someone that I'm trying to represent in my speech. There's also a real vulnerability. I feel an obligation when I come to the microphone to be like the most distilled Beth I could possibly be. How can I speak on the show in a way that my closest friends recognize as the person that they know, and that strangers could meet me in person and feel like this isn't a bit, she's the same person everywhere. And so I just try to hold that obligation and take that really seriously, which means a lot of, I don't know, I changed my mind. I'm struggling with this. Here's my first draft opinion, but I might come back to you later and say something different. I mean, it's, I think I just constantly get clear on the fact that when I show up on the show, it needs to be walking beside the listener, not in front of the listener in any respect.
I was just sitting here thinking that everyone sounds so lovely and wise. And the truest answer I can give is I've just always loved giving my opinion, and I found a way to make it my job. I wrote editorials all through high school and college when I had no business writing editorials. I didn't have anything helpful to say. I love it. I love talking about politics. I love talking about the news. I always have. This is not some, character benefit. It's just who I have always been. And I found and was just incredibly blessed to stumble into this situation with Beth where we have incredibly complementary conversational styles and approaches to the world. Because I think I would have worn out an audience by myself way before 10 years. And I do it because I need it. I need to process this stuff. I need to talk. I can either wear my husband out, or luckily wear Beth out. And she just seems to always be up for my takes. And so that's a real benefit. And it has been the blessing of my life to find that people are interested in hearing us talk. Because I think people need that space to process too. I am, I just need to process out loud with my own voice, but I'm so glad that other people find the processing capacity by listening to the two of us. What a blessing, what a gift. Because I got to get it out. And luckily this career came along that gave me an opportunity to do that.
Well, and it's interesting for the two of you, right? Because then the two of you are doing this together, which I wonder if that, I imagine, has both like its joys and its challenges, that you have a sort of a co-conspirator in all of this.
Well, I will tell you, the burden is then I expect the other people in my life to be such a good conversational partner. Like, I don't know, my 16-year-old son, which is way too high of an expectation to put onto him. yeah, I mean, we're talking about some of the toughest stuff out there, and doing it regularly. So yeah, of course, it's sometimes hard, and also just because of our personality difference. But I think that's been the learning, is that so often of what we're talking about comes down to sort of emotion, experience, personality. We wanted to make it a math problem. We want to make it like, no, x plus y equals this, but like that's not how it works in real life. That's not how it works with two people who share as much in common as Beth and I do. Much less if you're across a conversation with someone who's very, very different than you. And just learning like how much of this is really, the complexity of personality and history and genetics and family experiences and church experiences and geography and genealogy. I mean, like I could just, you may keep listing ologies. I can, because that's how much affects everything we bring to a conversation. And doing this for so long with another person. This is a crazy example, but go with me here. Y'all remember John and Kate plus 8? I hope you do, because it was a real
Oh,
gift.
yeah.
It was
Okay.
a real gift
Yes.
to the television community. And I know that Kate, we've all decided Kate is a little bit crazy. Fine, whatever. She was such an interesting parenting perspective, because when you have like, what did she have? 6? You could just see like, well, this isn't personality. Like this is just a child development phase. Because she saw at time 6, she could identify pretty quickly like this is just a thing that kids do, not this kid. And that's sort of what it's been like talking to one person about all this stuff for 10 years, right? It's not like it kind of strips away well, this is this political position or this policy or this, you can't blame it on something else. You just kind of get to see, you can track it across such a long period of time when you have one conversational partner in a way that's really illuminative and really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Sarah. Um, I think that people who are listening here, I always think that people always want to know, I joke, they want to know how the sausage is made. And so I thought we could just take a couple of specific episodes or projects that you all have done, and you could take us behind the scenes. Simran, can I just start with you as you thought about this most recent season of Wisdom in Practice? You had so many interesting conversations around this particular moment. Um, I wanted to ask you in particular about a conversation you had with Rabbi Shira Stutman about Jewish rituals for this moment. But can we take a step back further and just talk to me about how you saw this season and what you thought your goals were in terms of, I mean, I know you, I know a little bit of your personal philosophy about how you approach things, but I would love for you to share that with everyone about how you sort of see that playing out real time in this most recent season.
Yeah, my general sort of my 3-part interest is around disrupting bias, building empathy, and seeking wisdom. And so this podcast has been a really cool experience for me because it enables me to do all 3 at the same time. One of the real considerations in designing the season was around how do we bring in people who have experiences that are unfamiliar to a lot of us, and so diversity was key, and we thought about that from the basis of religion, of course, but also people who aren't religious, people who are coming from different parts of the country and different parts of the world, people who have different political views, people who have different racial backgrounds or sexual orientations or gender identities. And so that felt really important, I think, as the political landscape shifted over the last couple of years. I felt really I felt compelled to address, what's going on in our world, particularly with, attention to Gaza, but also recognizing that, my version of approaching that story isn't the same as what other people on this on this panel would do on their shows, right, or have done on their shows. And so for me, it was really sort of talking to people who are parts of these communities and understanding how they're navigating them by drawing from their traditions. And in the case of the episode with Rabbi Stutman, she shared with me this really interesting approach that she took when her congregation got really tight around conversations about campus protest. And she said, I knew that if I went in people would get defensive, people would put up their armor, that people would feel triggered, and it wouldn't be that productive of time together. And she said, instead, I sort of put people in intergenerational conversations and had them talk about, well, what is it like um, from your viewpoint, from your experience? Like, what is the moment feel like to you? What have you witnessed? What are you struggling with? And that draws from, Jewish approaches of dealing with um, embodied experience in relationship with people alongside you, so that you get a broader perspective, and so that you also can sort of leave the narrowness of your own experience. And I just thought that was such an interesting commentary, and something I've seen and experienced in different ways. But it was her sort of taking what she has understood about her own faith and how her community has navigated, tumult over the centuries, and then saying, "Oh, this is something new that I can offer, or at least repackage in a way that can help drive us forward and help us come together, and then talk about really hard things, right?" And so it was almost like the scaffolding there, and I really found that to be a beautiful example of the kind of thing that I'm hoping to do in the show.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Sarah was just saying, right? About her relationship with Beth is like very similar to what
Yeah,
you're saying. Rabbi Shira is intentionally
exactly.
also trying to put into place. Yeah. Um, Sarah and Beth, congratulations on 10 years, by the way. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I don't know if 10 years ago you guys thought you would be doing like a summer series on reimagining citizenship, but can you tell us about that and what went into that, just first of all, before we get into sort of how it went? Who wants to go first? I don't know,
I
Sarah. Beth
can.
looks like you're okay.
Yeah. We always have a conversation in our community about the 4th of July, initiated by listeners. 4th of July feels really hard to me this year, every year for 10 years. That's one gift of doing something for so long. You start to see those patterns and you kind of know what seasons bring things up for people that are complicated. So we have heard for 10 years, the 4th of July is hard for me, and have tried to think about what kind of support we can offer people. We're not going to have an answer for that. And our goal is not to come out and say, well, it shouldn't be, and let me tell you why, or absolutely, it's so difficult, and let me affirm exactly how you're feeling about it. Just, we want to offer something that helps you go deeper on what you're feeling and why you're feeling it and what you want to do with that. And so we were talking about the country's anniversary coming up. We were talking about just some bigger picture things that we've been thinking about, and decided let's do a little meditation series. Let's make it more explicit that we want to help you find your way in. And we started just talking about everything that being a citizen means. We read Democracy in America with our audience last year. We're reading Habits of the Heart with our audience this year. So both of those give a lot of language to what does it mean to be a citizen. And we started taking the discussions that we were having around those and building little mini meditations around them to share. And we offered them to our Substack community, and it was just really interesting to see where that met people and how it landed.
I also think it was just fun to have the challenge of a different type of format. Like,
Yeah.
instead of us being back and forth for an hour, it was literally like one of us or a listener or another member of our team for like 5, 7 minutes to like really distill down and get to something more profound and a little bit quicker amount of time, and hope that over 30 days that would build into something. Was really fun. I found the challenging aspect of the format energizing, I guess is for another word. And I think we were looking for a little something to offer that felt different than what we usually offer. And look, some of this is just every summer we have a conversation about. We've done all kinds of series over the summer because we're moms and our kids are home in the summer. That changes our days, that changes our workflow. And so one year we did a series on infrastructure and sort of pre-recorded it. And one year we did a series where we did sort of like group chats with listeners around our second book, Now What? So it's been fun to kind of play around with the format over the summers in a lot of different ways to see how it contributes, how it sort of changes what we do. Do we like that? Does it offer us freedom, or does it sort of hem us in? Like, I don't know. It's just playing around with the format too.
Hmm. Sarah, do you feel like what really is it like? Beth, I know you said it's sort of like a every 4th of July conversation. Do you feel like, Sarah, you came to different realizations about American culture doing this, like at the as you all went through sort of all of these conversations?
I mean, on our Substack community, every Thursday I do a good news brief. So, the place in my brain that is trained to find positive things to say has had a lot of practice, even in the toughest weeks, even when the toughest things happen. It's a practice. I'm going to record the good news brief. I'm going to find something positive that happened. And I don't mean like some town paid its citizens hospital bills. That's not what I'm talking about. I just recorded one where they have cured paralysis in Brazil. Like, they came out and said, like, we found this protein, you put it on the spinal cord, it regenerates the spinal cord. I mean, just stuff like that. And it's that part of my brain that like searches and knows that if you don't go looking for it, you can just stay in this very negative space. And so, like, that was sort of a more interesting application of that muscle I've built over time, where I pushed myself to say, like, I don't want to just say, you know, the same things we always kind of cling to, like, about some of the more positive aspects of the United States. Not because they're not true, that we are a place of enormous diversity, that we do have this, we have, a history of expansion of rights and positive, forward momentum. It's not that I didn't want to say that. I just wanted to push myself to find something different to add and something positive. And one of one of the meditations that I'm really proud of, I think it was really additive and contributive, was I did one on hospitality, and how, especially in the summer, the reality, while we're all questioning patriotism and the United States and what it means, is that Americans are welcoming hundreds of thousands of millions of people to our shore as hotel owners, as Airbnb owners, as restaurateurs, as shopkeepers. Like, they're just going to welcome a massive amount of tourists from other countries and other places around the world. And that is just the reality all year long, but particularly during the summer. And sort of like pushing myself to think about that and think about what that meant and think about how that's a reality of America that we just don't ever, that just kind of goes unacknowledged beyond like reports about the tourism industry, the coldest, most banal way to think about the fact that Americans hospitably welcome people from all over the world to our country. I really loved that one. It kind of helped me see things I don't usually see, helped me to push to sort of articulate what that means to me and what it means to just recognize that. And so that sort of exercise is something that is really important in our work. And the more I can help people build that muscle themselves, even better.
Have you had any feedback on that, Sarah? I mean, and Beth too, as you're talking to, or you're presenting some of this positive information, it must be so striking to people to hear, I don't know, something that is atypical in our news cycles today, which is, hey, here's some good things for us to think about. Do you find that people hear that and feel excited by it, or find it unusual? Have you gotten any feedback there?
Well, I mean, I think our community is so sort of in it with us, and they're here with us at Pantsuit Politics because they, don't believe it's the last day, as we always say. Like, there is no last day. We're going to keep going. Like, and I think they're sort of, especially around the good news brief. Like, I've been doing it for several years now, so they're like used to what they're going to hear. I mean, not always. Like, you'll tell things, I'll share something, and they'll be like, "Holy crap!" I had no idea. But with that series in particular, no, I think people um were really happy to have a place. Now, it was not celebratory. It's still bittersweet. Every meditation, even the one about hospitality, had that sense of vulnerability. Like, I can see the positivity and recognize that this is complicated. But that complication makes it ever so much sweeter. Like, you are expanding. What I found in my work in Pantsuit Politics, and I think our audience keeps coming back for, is Yeah, there's a really brutal side. There is a chaos lottery, and sometimes your ticket gets pulled. And also, that expands your ability on the other side to see the beauty, like Roxy was saying, seeing the beauty, seeing the power, seeing the connection. Like it's just all on a continuum. And when you expand one side, you expand the other.
Right. Like more than one thing could be true.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's oftentimes what we don't talk about enough. Beth, did you want to add anything else about the Reimagine It?
I would just say that I think the strain in American politics that is the most pervasive and damaging over 10 years is a sense of powerlessness.
Mm-hmm.
That I see all this happening and I cannot do anything about it. And everything I try to do is unsatisfying. You know, my action items are donate, vote, maybe knock doors, write postcards, maybe run for office. But even a lot of that just feels like I'm not doing anything. And I liked this series because I feel like we gave people a lot of different ways to think about how you're showing up as a citizen, and a lot of different shades of citizenship that don't get recognized. You know, we talked about what is it like to be a citizen who is kind of a lifeguard for other people, watching out for people in your community. Like we used a lot of different words to describe what citizenship looks like. And I just feel like creativity is the antidote to that powerlessness. And so the more creative ways we can bring people into thinking about themselves as citizens, and even, you know, residents and just people in community with one another. And I don't want to fixate too much on the legality of it, right? But you're here and you're doing a lot of different things every day that contribute to our civic life. Let's give those things some labels so that you see their value a little bit more clearly.
Roxy, I want to get to your to Saved by the City, but first I just want to ask the three of you. It just kind of occurred to me, Beth and Sarah, as you were talking. I'll give everybody a little preview. I was talking to Dr. Eddie Glaude yesterday about our keynote for our fall symposium. And we were talking about his most recent book, which is about we are the leaders that we need. And we were talking about the, to your point, Beth, right? Like that so much of our country has been focused on the way that you change something is by voting or by donating. And I want to just ask you all how you think about, from a faith perspective, like how you incorporate that into this moment and thinking about also, Beth, like this sense of, because I hear this all the time from people who just feel like they're just like, well, what can I do? I'm just a person here. All of this seems to be happening around me. So I don't know if Simran, do you want to start? Can I have you start and talk about faith, and then we can throw Sarah, Beth, and Roxy into this too.
Yeah, of course. No, it's my pleasure. It's actually, I mean, it's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit recently. I mean, partly because everyone I meet around the country is struggling with something along those lines, and honestly, too, so do I. That it does feel easy to give in, and you know, kind of like what Sarah and Beth were saying, like it can feel like overwhelming and like almost like it doesn't matter, like there's no impact we can make. You know, one of the places that I've been turning, that actually is not from within my own tradition, but it's tied in with things that I've learned from Sikh practice, is the Serenity Prayer. You know, I'm at Union Seminary right now. I'm overlooking Reinhold Niebuhr Way outside my window right now, who wrote the Serenity Prayer, and the teaching there. I mean, most people here, I'm imagining, will know it, but God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that, as I've been thinking about it, it feels like a much more honest way of looking at the world than putting the pressure on ourselves to fix everything. It feels like a much more healthy way of thinking about how we engage and deal with the disaster that is our country and is our world right now. And it's I think what I like about it is that it reminds me anytime I start to feel that overwhelmed, that even though I want to do everything, you know, I have a particular role to play. It keeps me humble in terms of what I can actually contribute. And then it also helps me think about, well, if everybody is playing their role, there really is opportunity to make that change we're hoping for. So I think that's the way that, one way that faith has been playing into my own approach here.
I think a lot about when we would go speak at college campuses and people, the students would say, I just want my vote to count. And I think what they really meant is I want my vote to pick the winner, right? Every time. Like I want it to be impactful. And I think that's like the undercurrent of what a lot of us say, like, well, it won't matter. Well, it might not change what you want it to change, but it does matter. Right? That's the secret to the serenity prayer is you can change things. There are some things you can control, and there are very, very many things you cannot. Things of very, very high consequence, very high stakes things that I just can't do much about from my home in Paducah, Kentucky. And I think pushing our audience to like really face that is some of the most difficult work we do when we say like, yeah, there's not a lot we can do about this. That's just the hard reality. I want to tell you every time, the sort of the siren song of capitalism. Everything you do matters. Everything makes you happy. Every purchase can change your life. But that's just not true. And also, the things you do have control over have enormous importance and impact. Just maybe not to the level you wish they did. Every connection we make, every conversation we have, like I don't talk for a living because I think conversation doesn't matter. It does matter immensely, even if it just matters to the relationship with which you share the person you're talking with, right? Like if it only just matters to the person you're talking about, that matters. If it only just matters to you and the person you're talking to doesn't give a crap, still matters. Like I just think that that's the hard thing is just this like paradox of everything we do has impact and also we cannot change everything. That tension is something that we really do try to articulate and hold on our podcast.
So we're going to get to everyone's questions. So please start putting questions in the chat if you want to. But Roxy, before we do that, can you talk about one episode you did, toxic empathy is now a sin. And can you take me into a little of the thinking of what went into, first of all, I mean, I think obviously everyone probably understands the news context around that who's on this call, but maybe just where you felt like you wanted to add to this conversation.
Sure. Well, a big part of our podcast from the beginning has sort of been exploring this dissonance that we feel between like a Christianity that we grew up with, specifically in like more evangelical circles for both me and my co-host, and just the values that we feel like came along with that upbringing that we learned that we still really cling to, and sort of a dissonance with what feels like that particular crowd, as well as just like the general public seems to be talking about when it comes to like evangelical values or Christian values or and so one of our early episodes was like how we survived the great evangelical betrayal. And we were really talking about sort of the shift in political discourse, particularly when it came to the marginalized. Sort of the political rhetoric around immigrants, around women, around LGBTQ people, and just how different that felt than what we'd grown up with. And so this episode really came out of what feels like such a striking, baffling dissonance, which is a whole bunch of people who are Christians are saying empathy is now a sin. Empathy is toxic. And this came about, it was really like a lot of sort of I'm trying to remember what this episode was. It was last year. So it was like kind of leading up to, it was around the election. It was just before the election. It was just after. And there was just, there was a book on how empathy is toxic. There was a book on how it's a sin. There was like a dozen podcasts or something that were talking about this. There were several key players talking about this, but it really spread out from just like these niches on the internet and became like a driving discourse around how we should consider people and consider policies. And we were, so some of this was coming from pastors, and we thought, okay, we have to talk about this. Like, how did we get to this point where what feels like such a fundamental aspect of Christianity, to be empathetic, to be compassionate, which the argument would be that these are different. But how did this become a sin? How are we saying this is a sin now? And so, um, it was not a lot of fun, but we like listened to all these podcasts and we read the books and went down ugly rabbit holes on the internet. But we really just wanted to figure out where this was coming from. And I think what was really striking for both of us when we really started digging in is the way that it became like the boogeyman. Like it was the thing that these folks were blaming everything on. Like they were blaming, our immigration policies on it. They were blaming, the woke agenda was all because of empathy. And and this was like just as there was sort of conversations around like stopping federal funding and stuff. And it was like that was our or I mean not our federal funding, our international aid. That was because of toxic empathy. And it was just sort of like, what are we doing here? Like, we're pitting all of these things on a quality that really feels like it should be basic to human flourishing and for sure on Christianity. So that was really what we were getting into there. And that's a big part of when we don't always talk politics on Saved by the City, as I mentioned before, but I would say when we do, it's really like to explore these areas where it feels very dissonant with how we were raised as Christians and how we sort of feel like these should be very clear Christian values that are being sort of disrupted or betrayed.
Thanks for that, Roxy. It looks like we have a question or two I wanted to get to, and let's start with Liz Worthington, who says, I'm struck by the conversation on the tension between what we do matters and seeing the impact we want in the world, especially when we can't control it. How might you define impact then with that tension in mind? Perhaps reframing it is helpful. Who wants to take that one?
I mean, I can say that to also pick up on your question about faith, Nyla, just thinking about the body of Christ helps me a lot when I think about impact and the idea that in the body of Christ, we all have different roles to play and the connections that we have to each other. So, when people ask me, like, do you think your show is helping? If you're making a show that is supposed to be about lowering the temperature and creating better political conversation, do you look at the world and think you're helping? Which always kind of feels like, I don't know. Yes and no. Like, it's not solving it, to Sarah's point. It's not fixing it. I can't argue that our political conversation has improved over the 10 years that we've been making fancy politics. What I do know, to that kind of body of Christ idea, is I have a role to play and I'm trying to play my role. And I do believe that somewhere over here on the foot, something good is happening because of that. And we hear that from our audience all the time. This relationship has been mended for me. I was able to speak courageously at work about something because of language that you gave me, whatever. So that tension between kind of impact and control, for me, it just helps me to remember. And I think, most faith traditions have a version of this, like you are here to do something, but not everything. I think the Serenity Prayer is a beautiful encapsulation of that too. So I try to look for the impact and celebrate it and recognize it where I can, without having expectations, limiting or otherwise, about what that impact might look like.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable, Beth. I will say, as a journalist, as someone who's been a journalist for more than 20 years, I feel like I really had to sort of reframe why I went into journalism to begin with. I think, especially if you think about journalists my age, like we talk, people would talk about like democracy and the fourth estate and information. And I will say, like, when it seems like a lot of people don't care about information anymore, you do have to really think about, like, does what I'm doing matters? And I think I've had to reframe just, I'm doing what I know is right, and that affects the people who are consuming the news that I'm doing. And that's all I can control. And I can control the community that consumes the news that I'm creating. And that's like what's my role, right? And that's how I've had to reframe things.
Yeah,
Sarah, Roxy, Simran?
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to pick up again, like also on your faith question, Nyla, for me, I love what I do. I believe in it. I believe in the institutional power of journalism. I think that, these big picture like conversations that we have to have really matter. So, but I also feel um regularly humbled when I go to church and like nobody's thinking about these, or people might be thinking about them, but it's like those are not the conversations that we're having. And I am now married to an Episcopal priest. We were both single when we started the podcast, but now I'm married and I married a priest. And he I'm re he follows the news sort of, and as his spouse who is in journalism, I'm always like, how do you not know this is happening? But then it's like when we walk around the neighborhood where his church is, there are a lot of like housing insecure people on the streets who are like, hey, Father John, I've got a question for you. I want to talk to you. Just and when he's like thinking about his sermon and I'll be like, oh, you've got to talk about this hard-hitting political thing. He's like, no, I'm really thinking about the people in my pews and how they're going to hear this and what they're thinking and what's going to help them really live in their faith over the next week. And I think that's a way that I am reminded that like you have a sphere of influence that is like mostly the people around you. Like even if you are talking to thousands of people on a podcast or publishing articles to thousands of people, like the people you're going to impact the most are the people that are like in your life and in your house of worship, your faith community, like the people that you really like, those are the people that you can really impact. And I am regularly humbled by that on Sunday mornings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Simran, I think you wanted to add something. Oh, go ahead, Sarah, also.
Yeah, I mean,
Why don't we go Simran? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. He's muted. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
follow
mean,
you.
I just think that we get lots of messages. I'm still in relationship with my parents because of what I've seen and heard modeled on Pantsuit Politics. I've decided to run for office. I changed careers. Like, I know it has impact. I don't have to question that, and certainly not over 10 years. I really try to rid the word fix from my vocabulary. I'm an Enneagram 1. That's not a good verb for me. You don't fix anything when it comes to human beings. You can improve, and some people have more power than others when it comes to that. Because I mean, that's right. That's sort of the crux of it too, is it's less a conversation about impact and it's more a conversation of power. I think people feel disempowered in lots of ways. I know I do. I live in a red state where I've been gerrymandered. I feel disempowered rightfully because of that. But also the reality is some people have more power than me. That's a reality of human existence. Some people are going to have more power than you. And I think sort of facing that fairly and as objectively as we can, without this idea. I think that the internet sort of gets in our heads and makes us think we're on some sort of level playing field because everybody can post and everybody can like and everybody can comment. But we're not, like I think about Taylor Swift all the time. We're all liking and commenting and obsessed with her on the internet, and she's not on there. She is not there. She is not participating. She says openly, like, I don't do that anymore. Because she has enormous power. And with that cultural power, I think it was the situation online became very different from her. Good
Yeah,
for
like
her.
when Ed Sheeran says, I don't have a phone. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, because you're Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also like the tone too, right? Because he's Ed Sheeran, but also because he's Ed Sheeran, his experience online is something we cannot comprehend. Good for
Very
him.
true.
You know what I mean? Like, get rid of it. Like, I think that's all of the, everything we're talking about is complicated by the fact that we do our jobs online, which is both a real community that I know there's impact. I meet these people in real life. Some of them are now my friends who I text on my phone. And also there is like this sort of parasocial relationship. A lot of this takes place on the internet. So for a long time, the main, platform for our comments was Instagram. Thank God that's no longer the case. So I think it's like that's the complicating factor when you talk about impact and influence. It's sort of tainted by this idea that, well, if a lot of people see it on the internet, that means you have power. I mean, people speak to us about our platform a lot in this way that like I owe something to them because I have a lot of people listen to what I have to say. I become a product. I mean, there's just a lot of complicating factors when you get into where we do our work, how people can comment it, the difference between impact, influence, actual political power, control. Like it's a big ball of wax, as we say.
I have a couple follow questions, and we have a question in the chat that relates to that. But Simran, can you answer? Because I know you wanted to weigh in, and then let's go to those because there's some interesting questions that are in the chat about podcasting in particular. But Simran, I want you to weigh
Yeah,
in.
sure. I can be super brief, but it's just sort of picking up on something I heard each of you say in terms of modeling is also a way of thinking about what we're putting out there as having value. And I think about this all the time, right? Like where else will people hear a reasonable civil conversation among people who might disagree on certain things, and we can go into depth on that. And I think showing people, even just in terms of like not just the how, but also giving people the courage of like, hey, it's okay to have an opinion and to explore it with someone and to explore their opinions, and see where it takes you, and not land in the same place necessarily or try to claim something universal. Like I think there's something really important about people being able to see that somewhere, and there aren't many places where that's happening right now.
So let's see if hopefully let's try to get to two more questions before we have like 8 more minutes. So Cheryl says, thanks to each of you for your meaningful work in the world. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what the podcast as a medium allows you to do that other mediums don't. How has this been a gift to your mission and calling? And can I add another one on there, even though I know we're trying to look, which is I'm really curious as Sarah, just to pick up on what you said about like, you're not just relying on Instagram comments anymore, how Substack has changed, and having a Substack community in the podcast platform has also changed that conversation. But who wants to weigh in just on the gift of a podcast? And I could do a whole hour on why I love audio. So I'm not going to answer this question.
I mean, I just tell people you can't skim a podcast. That's why I like it. It's real easy to pop on Facebook or Instagram or X and see a thing and just like take off like a rocket ship. And, sort of long form media like a podcast where I'm sure you could like listen to it 2 times the speed to really find something you hate that one of us said.
There are people who do that, who
there are
listen at
people
2
that do
times
that.
speed.
That's not my experience. And so I just think that it's the intimacy of being in someone's ears and having that long form conversation that sort of maybe they'll find something that are like, yeah. And then the next minute I'll say something and they'll be like, wait, what? Like I just think that that's really a positive experience. And it's what I love about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think for me, it was an unexpected medium, and it was nice to do something in a different form than print. Um, but I do think we're not at 10 years yet, but we're starting up on our 10th season, which is just a half a year. But
Also, congratulations.
yeah. But it's a long conversation, and it's a long time with people. I mean, not everybody listens all the time or, comes back season after season, but you really get a chance to go on a journey with people and to process with people, your guests, your co-hosts, but also like your listeners too. And I think there's something to that longevity and to the way that you can build trust through that's like really unique to podcasting.
Yeah, I'll just echo that and say, there's in my experience, it's not just the the engagement from the listeners themselves, which feels deeper and more significant. It's also my own experience of like the corporal embodied experience of being with someone and being able to like look at their body language while they're describing what their life is like. And I'm like, oh shit, like I feel like I actually know you. Whereas, you can read something on a newsletter or social media or what, and you don't even know if people mean what they say, right? Like it's so disembodied. And so I think there's something
But you can actually hear
that
it in their
allows
voice, right? Like we can tell,
exactly.
like it's just part of our DNA that we can hear things in people's voices. We can tell if they're smiling or right.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much of a deeper connection there, right? It's so much more human. So I really love these. It's not like Roxy, it's not something that I'm trained in or expected that I'd be doing, but I really loved it.
Yeah. Um, okay, this question's from Daryl. To those who are Christians, how do you address the transformation of evangelicalism in recent years, as documented by Tim Alberta et al., to something that frankly doesn't look biblical, which we have started to talk a little bit about?
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised as an evangelical. In the Southern Baptist Church, through the lens of history, I know there is nothing new about ideological extremism in any religion. And so I don't feel, somebody said, I think there was a question is like, have they tainted it forever? No, I just, I think that this is,
Right. That was another question about
yeah, the
white
reality
evangelicals, right?
of, yeah,
Yeah.
the stakes are high in religion. There will be extremists. Um, there will be politicization. There will be violence. Like I try to zoom out at any possible moment that it feels sort of existential, or I can feel myself sort of spinning up into that place. I've been reading the Cromwell trilogy from Hilary Mantel, like very helpful to go back to that period in history and remind yourself that um, theological debates that are swept up in politics and power and violence are not new. And so I think that lurch from the evangelical church is a reality. I wouldn't call it surprising, but I also don't think it is
Irreparable, which was one of the questions.
irreparable.
Right.
Irreparable.
Right. That was
Yeah.
another question.
We see all the time that politics is downstream of culture, and I have been questioning that lately, and whether there's a distinction anymore, whether culture is now downstream of politics, I don't know. And I've tried to think about all the ways our political language has evolved in my lifetime. What does the label Democrat or Republican mean? Nothing today like it did 20 years ago. And so as I find myself, I have this instinct to the question to when we're talking about Christianity to be like, but that's not real Christianity. My version is. And I think, well, that's just not true. I mean, language is very democratic, and what things are shifts in a lot of ways. I could give you a definition of being Republican that feels true and meaningful to me that is totally divorced from what the Republican Party stands for today. And I'm trying to kind of hold that space around Christianity too. And so I found myself lately saying to people, Christianity is an even bigger tent than Democrat and Republican. And look how much those parties are struggling to contain all of the people that claim those labels. So of course Christianity has that struggle too. And all I can tell you is my version, and I'm not more or less entitled to that moniker than anyone else. It is something that I am really wrestling with right now, though. What would it mean to me to disclaim this word, or to claim it in a way that says other people should disclaim it because they're not practicing it, because theirs is just politics and mine is real faith? I don't know. But I appreciate the question a lot, because that is where I'm spending a lot of time right now.
Yeah, because it's the weaponization. That's what I kept thinking about when you were talking about empathy, is when you claim, I'm the real one, I'm the real deal, I'm the one. I think all the time about that piece went viral after 2016. I don't know how to tell you how to care, which was just a weaponization of empathy. Like it was a weaponization of like, I'm the real caring person here.
Mhm.
and you're not. And I'm the real Christian and you're not. And there's a sneer behind that I really don't want to participate in. That I really don't want to do because I don't think it's productive and I don't think it's helpful. And I think it shuts people down, which is sort of what the opposite of what we're trying to do on the podcast. Even we were just talking about podcasting, I mean, and that we can hear smiles and laughs and wisdom. That is true for people who create hours and hours and hours of podcasting that is in direct opposition to my view of the world. They also have people who listen and have parasocial relationships with them and can hear their smile and laugh and feel connected to them in very, very different places than I am. Worldview, politics, religion, all of it. And so I'm just trying to like think about what does that mean? How does that affect how I move about in the world so that I can stay connected and not get into that nihilistic, nothing matters, nothing has impact space that is so easy to fall into in politics and particularly in politics on the internet.
Yeah.
We're actually, that is where we're going to have to leave it. But I thank you guys. It's 1:30, which actually is 1:31. So sorry, we're a minute over. But thank you to everyone who joined us. And I put one last link in the chat for our fall symposium where we're going to be having more conversations like this. In the meantime, we get to all listen to each other, which is great. So I don't feel like we have to say goodbye because everyone can listen to Pantsuit Politics and Saved by the City and Wisdom and Practice. And I want to thank Roxy and Beth and Sarah and Simran for joining us. Thank you. Thanks for your time. And thanks to all of you for spending an hour with us today with the Religion News Service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Have a great day, everyone.